So here you are, thinking about yourself standing next to a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's a strange thought experiment, really, and one that requires a bit of imagination, because you and this animal are separated by about 66 million years of Earth's history. Tyrannosaurus Rex lived during the very end of what geologists call the late Cretaceous period, specifically from about 68 million years ago to 66 million years ago. That's a span of roughly 2 million years, which sounds like a long time, but in geological terms, it's actually a pretty narrow window. The whole thing ended with a mass extinction event that wiped out all the non-avian dinosaurs, but we'll get to that later. For now, what matters is that T-Rex was one of the last great dinosaurs to ever walk the Earth, and it never saw a human being because humans wouldn't show up for another 65.5 million years or so. The name Tyrannosaurus Rex translates from Latin and Greek as Tyrant Lizard King, which was chosen by paleontologist Henry Fairfield Osborn when he formally named the species in 1905. Osborn was working at the American Museum of Natural History in New York, and he had access to some of the first reasonably complete T-Rex fossils ever discovered. The name stuck, obviously, and it's become one of the most recognizable scientific names in popular culture. You probably already knew that, but it's worth saying out loud because the name itself tells you something about how people saw this animal from the very beginning. Big, powerful, and dominant. Now let's talk about size, because that's really where the comparison between you and T-Rex starts to get interesting. An adult Tyrannosaurus Rex was about 40 feet long from the tip of its snout to the end of its tail. That's roughly 12 meters if you prefer metric. Most of that length was actually tail and body. The head itself was massive, usually around 5 feet long, which is taller than many adult humans when you stand the skull upright. The animal stood about 12 to 13 feet tall at the hips when it was in its normal walking posture. If you're imagining a person standing next to it, picture someone around 5.5 to 6 feet tall, pretty average for an adult human. And then imagine that person coming up to about the midpoint of the T-Rex's thigh. The dinosaur's head, when it looked down, would be towering somewhere around 17 to 20 feet off the ground, depending on how it held its neck. Weight-wise, estimates for large adult T-Rex individuals range from about 7 to 9 metric tons. That's roughly 7,000 to 9,000 kilograms. To put that in perspective, you, as an average adult human, probably weigh somewhere between 60 and 90 kilograms, depending on your build, so a T-Rex outweighed you by a factor of about 80 to 150 times. Think about that for a second. It's like comparing yourself to a large potato. Tyrannosaurus Rex was a theropod dinosaur, which means it belonged to a group of mostly carnivorous dinosaurs that walked on 2 legs. Theropods include famous names like Velociraptor, Allosaurus, and all modern birds, which are actually living theropod dinosaurs, though obviously much smaller in most cases. T-Rex had a body plan that was typical for large theropods. Powerful hind limbs, relatively small forelimbs, those are the famous tiny arms, a massive skull, and a long, heavy tail that acted as a counterbalance. When it walked, its body was roughly horizontal, with the tail stretched out behind and the head projecting forward. This posture is very different from the old museum reconstructions that showed dinosaurs standing upright like a kangaroo, which we now know was incorrect based on biomechanical studies of the joints and bones. The skull of T-Rex is one of the most distinctive features. It was built like a solid, reinforced battering ram, with thick bones, large openings called fenestrae that reduced weight while maintaining strength, and enormous jaw muscles. The teeth were not all the same shape. The front teeth were more D-shaped in cross-section and were used for gripping and pulling, while the teeth along the sides were more blade-like with serrated edges for cutting through flesh and bone. Some of the largest teeth, including the root, could be over a foot long. Your teeth, by comparison, are tiny, delicate, and designed for a much gentler, omnivorous diet. You have molars for grinding plant material and incisors for biting, but nothing remotely like the banana-shaped bone-crushing teeth of T-Rex. The arms of Tyrannosaurus rex were small, true, but not useless. Each arm was about 3 feet long, which is short relative to the body, but still substantial in absolute terms. Each hand had 2 clawed fingers, and there's evidence from the muscle attachment sites on the bones that these arms were quite strong, possibly capable of lifting several hundred pounds. Scientists have debated what T-Rex used its arms for. Maybe holding on to prey, maybe helping it get up from a resting position. But the truth is, we're not entirely certain. What's clear is that they weren't the primary weapons. The jaws were. T-Rex lived in what is now Western North America, but the geography back then was very different. During the late Cretaceous, a shallow sea called the Western Interior Seaway ran north to south through the middle of the continent, dividing it into 2 land masses. T-Rex lived on the western landmass, called Laramidia by paleontologists, in environments that included river valleys, floodplains, and coastal lowlands. The climate was warmer and more humid than today, with no polar ice caps and higher sea levels. Fossils of T-Rex have been found in several geological formations, most famously the Hell Creek Formation, which spans parts of Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming. Everything we know about T-Rex comes from fossils, which, honestly, is pretty remarkable when you think about it. Fascinating stuff, right? And hey, if you're finding this interesting and want to drift off to more facts like these, consider subscribing so you don't miss out on the next deep dive. Fossils form when an animal dies and its bones are buried in sediment before they can completely decay. Over millions of years, minerals seep into the bones and replace the original material, turning them into rock. Not every dead dinosaur became a fossil. In fact, fossilization is rare, requiring just the right conditions of burial and preservation. Because of this, the fossils we have represent only a tiny fraction of all the T-Rex individuals that ever lived. Paleontologists estimate that there may have been a total population of about 20,000 T-Rex individuals alive at any given time, spread across their range. And over the 2 million years they existed, billions of individuals lived and died. Out of all those, we found fewer than 50 partial skeletons, and only a handful of those are reasonably complete. Some of the most famous T-Rex specimens have nicknames. Sioux, discovered in South Dakota in 1990, and now displayed at the Field Museum in Chicago, is one of the largest and most complete T-Rex. Rex skeletons ever found, with about 90% of the bones preserved. Scotty, found in Saskatchewan, Canada, is estimated to have been even heavier than Sioux, possibly the largest T-Rex known. Stan, another South Dakota specimen, has been extensively studied and cast, with replicas displayed in museums worldwide. Each of these skeletons has contributed different pieces of information about T-Rex anatomy, growth, and life history. When you look at a mounted T-Rex skeleton in a museum, you're looking at bones that were once inside a living, breathing animal walking around under a Cretaceous sky. The bones show signs of life, healed injuries, bite marks from other T-Rex individuals, evidence of infections and diseases. Some bones have grooves and pits where muscles and ligaments attached, and scientists use these to reconstruct what the animal looked like when it was covered in flesh. Skin impressions are extremely rare for T-RAX, but related tyrannosaurs have left patches of fossilized skin that show a texture of small pebbly scales. There's ongoing debate about whether T-RAX had feathers. Some earlier, smaller tyrannosaurs did have filament-like feathers, but the largest tyrannosaurs probably had mostly scaly skin, possibly with some feathering in juveniles. So when you imagine standing next to a T-RAX, picture this: an animal as long as a school bus, weighing as much as an elephant, actually more than one elephant, standing on two legs with a head the size of a refrigerator, filled with teeth as long as your hand. Its body is horizontal, tail stretched out behind, small arms folded against its chest, and eyes looking forward, with a gaze that suggests decent depth perception. You, by comparison, are standing there at maybe 1/10 of its height, 100th of its weight, with no natural weapons, no armor, no thick hide, just soft skin, a relatively fragile skeleton, and a big brain. And that's the setup for the thought experiment. What if you, with all your human limitations and advantages, were somehow placed in the same time and place as this animal? You never were, of course, and you never could be. But imagining the scenario helps you understand what T-RAX was, what you are, and how different life on Earth can be across the vast stretches of geological time. The whole comparison is built on evidence from rocks, bones, and decades of careful scientific study, not on speculation or fantasy. You're thinking about a real animal that really existed, reconstructed as accurately as current science allows. Now that you've got that basic picture of a T-RAX next to you, with its enormous length and weight towering over your everyday human frame, let's settle in and look a little closer at the bones and muscles holding those bodies together. Your skeleton and its were built for very different lives, and understanding the differences starts with how you both stand and move through the world. Humans like you walk upright on two legs, with a spine that's curved in an S shape to balance your head directly over your pelvis. This posture lets you carry things, reach high, and see over obstacles, but it puts a lot of stress on your lower back over time. Your legs are long relative to your arms, with knees that lock straight and feet that are arched for efficient walking and running over long distances. An average adult human stands between 1.5 and 2 meters tall, give or take, with arms that reach down to about mid-thigh when you're standing relaxed. Those arms end in hands with opposable thumbs, 5 fingers each, and a complex web of muscles and tendons that let you grip, pinch, and manipulate objects with precision. Your shoulders are wide and flexible, allowing a full range of motion for throwing or climbing. T-RAX, on the other hand, had a posture that was horizontal, more like a giant bird or crocodile than a person. Its spine was stiff along the back, supported by tall neural spines that anchored massive muscles running from the hips to the skull. The hind legs were the powerhouse, enormous femurs, thicker than a man's torso, connected to tibias and fibulas that supported that 7 to 9 ton body on just 2 feet. Each foot had 3 weight-bearing toes with large claws, and the whole leg structure was designed for bursts of power rather than endurance. The pelvis was a broad, reinforced plate of bone, handling forces that would snap a human hip like a twig. When standing still, those hips sat about 3.5 to 4 meters off the ground, and the legs could pivot powerfully for turning or lunging. Your ribcage is narrow and deep, protecting lungs and heart with 12 pairs of flexible ribs that expand easily for breathing. T-RAX had a broader, barrel-shaped torso, with ribs that formed a cage around organs built to fuel a much larger metabolism. Its heart, inferred from space in the chest cavity and comparisons to other theropods, would have been the size of a small car, pumping blood through arteries as thick as your arm. Muscles layered over those bones were dense and fibrous. The gluteals and hamstrings in the legs alone could generate enough force to move tons of mass, while your leg muscles max out at propelling maybe 100 kilograms at a sprint. Now shift up to the arms. Your arms are proportionally long, about 75% of your height, and versatile, with elbow joints that bend in multiple directions and wrists that rotate fully. The humerus, radius, and ulna give you reach and strength for lifting your own body weight easily. T-RAX arms were short, only about 1 meter long each, with a humerus that's robust but stubby, ending in 2-fingered hands with curved claws. Those arms weren't flimsy. Muscle scars show they could curl up to 200 kilograms or more, maybe for scratching or steadying prey close to the body. But relative to the body, they were tiny, less than 10% of the torso length, unlike your balanced proportions. The skull is where things get really stark. Your head weighs about 5 kilograms, sits lightly on your neck vertebrae called cervicals, and houses a brain case that's expanded for higher thinking. The human jaw is light, with a mandible that hinges smoothly for chewing varied foods, meat, plants, nuts, and teeth that are small, with enamel for grinding. You have 32 permanent teeth, incisors for cutting, canines for tearing, premolars and molars for crushing. The whole setup relies on precise jaw muscles, but the bite force tops out around 700 newtons, enough for an apple, but not much else. T-RAX's skull was a monster, up to 1.5 meters long and weighing over 200 kilograms on its own, balanced on a thick neck of fused vertebrae. Large fenestrae, air-filled openings, lightened it without sacrificing strength, and the jaws were a vise of bone lined with 50 to 60 serrated teeth, some over 30 centimeters long, including roots. Those teeth were banana-shaped in profile, reinforced with dentin, and replaced continuously like shark teeth. The jaw muscles, anchored to a huge sagittal crest on the skull roof, generated bite forces estimated at 35,000 to 57,000 newtons, 6 to 8 times stronger than a great white shark. That could puncture and shatter bone, unlike your omnivore's toolkit. Eye sockets tell a story too. Yours face forward mostly, giving good depth perception for hand-eye coordination, and your eyes see color trichromatically with cones sensitive to red, green, blue. Pupils adjust for low light, and you have eyelids plus a nictitating membrane remnant in tears. T-RAX eyes were large, forward-facing for binocular vision, likely with good acuity and motion detection, though color vision is debated. Probably dichromatic like most reptiles, strong on yellows and blues. Olfactory bulbs in the brain case were huge, suggesting smell rivaled the vultures, picking up scents kilometers away, while your nose handles about 1 million scents, but not at that predatory intensity. Ears were another sense edge. Human ears catch a wide frequency range for speech, recessed in the skull for protection. T-RAX had middle ear cavities enlarged for low-frequency sounds, like footsteps or roars, inferred from CT scans of skulls. Hearing probably extended to infrasound, helping detect distant prey or rivals through ground vibrations. Skin and covering differ quietly. Your skin is soft, layered with fat and sweat glands for cooling, hair for insulation. T-RAX had scaly hide, thick in places like an elephant's, with osteoderms possible but unproven. Related tyrannosaurs show pebbly scales, no full feathers on adults. Internally, your lungs expand via diaphragm, efficient for endurance. T-Rex likely had a bird-like air sac system boosting oxygen, given theropod traits, fueling anaerobic bursts. Blood vessels scaled up too. Your aorta is 2 to 3 centimeters wide. Theirs pushed blood to brain and extremities against gravity. Nerves ran longer paths. Your spinal cord ends at L1. Theirs stretched the full tail length. Healing shows resilience. Your bones mend slowly. T-Rex fossils have regrown fractures. Infections survived, which honestly makes you think about fragility. Your frame evolved for cooperation and tools, not solo predation. And hey, if these body breakdowns are easing you towards sleep with their steady rhythm, subscribe for more calm dives into the ancient world. Muscles fatigue differently. Yours build lactic acid quick in sprints. Theirs geared for power over pursuit. Posture links to balance. Your inner ear gyroscopes steady you. T-Rex's semicircular canals, studied via endocasts, handled massive head sways. Hands again, yours dexterous for knots, writing. T-Rex claws gripped, but couldn't finesse. Leg bones, your femur-tibia ratio suits speed. There's power, with fibula reduced like ostriches. Pelvic tilt, yours vertical load. There's horizontal thrust. Ribs count, you 12 pairs. T-Rex similar, but gastralia belly ribs for stability. Vertebrae, you're 33 mobile. T-Rex 50 plus, fused tail for whip. Neck flex, yours 7 vertebrae, mobile. T-Rex 10, S curved for strikes. Tail roll, yours vestigial coccyx. There's counterweight, 40 plus vertebrae. So as you picture your upright, nimble form beside that low-slung, muscular bulk, light bones, keen eyes, clever hands against armored mass, crushing jaws, raw power, the contrast settles in quietly. Your body fragile, yet adaptable, next to a predator engineered for dominance. Now that you've got a sense of how your own body stacks up against the sheer bulk and power of T-Rex anatomy, let's ease into the world where that animal actually lived. You're already picturing its robust frame next to your more delicate one. So now imagine stepping back in time to see what surrounded it on those late Cretaceous floodplains. T-Rex roamed what paleontologists call Laramedia, the western landmass of North America, during the Maastrichtian stage of the late Cretaceous, roughly 68 to 66 million years ago. This wasn't the North America you know today, with its Rocky Mountains fully formed, or Great Plains as they are now. A vast inland sea known as the Western Interior Seaway split the continent into eastern and western halves for much of the Cretaceous. Laramedia stretched from what is now Alaska down to Mexico, featuring broad river valleys, deltas, swamps, and coastal plains, where sediment from rivers constantly deposited layers that would later preserve fossils. The Hell Creek Formation, spanning Montana, Wyoming, and South Dakota, is one of the richest sources of T-Rex fossils and gives a snapshot of this environment. Think muddy rivers meandering through fern-choked bottoms and conifer woodlands. The climate back then was milder overall, with average temperatures warmer than today's by several degrees Celsius. No ice sheets capped the poles, so global sea levels were higher, flooding coastlines and creating more wetlands. Summers might have been hot and dry in places, winters mild and wet, supporting a lush vegetation that didn't need frost protection. Rainfall was seasonal, feeding rivers that carved channels through the landscape, and evidence from oxygen isotopes in fossils suggests humidity levels that would feel sticky to you, more like a subtropical bayou than the arid west many T-RAX sites are in today. Plants were diverse and familiar in some ways, alien in others. Flowering angiosperms had exploded in diversity by this time, forming understories with magnolia-like trees, palms, and early grasses appearing in pollen records. Tall conifers dominated the canopy. Redwoods, cypresses, and araucarias up to 100 feet high, their needles rustling in winds that carried spores from ferns and horsetails along riverbanks. Ginkgo trees shed fan-shaped leaves seasonally, and cycads added a prehistoric palm-like look to drier spots. No oaks or maples yet in abundance, though. Those came later. Pollen from Hell Creek sediments shows over 100 plant species coexisting, fueling a food web from microbes up to giants like T-RAX. Now the other animals sharing this space. It's a crowded roster. Triceratops, those three-horned ceratopsians, roamed in herds, their parrot-like beaks cropping ferns and tough conifer browse, fossils showing worn teeth from grinding plants. Ankylosaurus lumbered along armored like a living tank, its clubbed tail swinging at threats, osteoderms embedded in thick hide. Duck-billed hadrosaurs like Edmontosaurus filled the mid-sized herbivore niche, traveling in massive groups, hundreds strong based on bone beds, their battery of teeth shearing fibrous leaves like living lawnmowers. Pachycephalosaurs, dome-headed like Pachycephalosaurus, butted heads possibly over mates or territory, their thickened skulls acting as battering rams. Smaller theropods patrolled too. Troodontids with big brains and sickle claws, dromaeosaurs akin to oversized raptors, ornithomimids as ostrich-like runners. Armored nodosaurs grazed low vegetation, nodosaur fossils preserving gut contents of ferns and seeds. Crocodilians lurked in rivers larger than modern ones, with champsosaurs, long-snouted aquatic reptiles, ambushing fish. Turtles the size of cars plied the waters, and pterosaurs soared overhead, though smaller by late Cretaceous. Mammals were there but tiny, multituberculates like rodent-sized pouch-bearers gnawing seeds, early marsupials scavenging insects. No deer, no dogs, no horses yet. Placental mammals were shrew-like, hiding in underbrush. Fish-filled rivers, paddlefish, gars, mosasaurs offshore in the seaway. Insects buzzed. Dragonflies with 30-inch wingspans from earlier Cretaceous lingered in memory. But by T-RAX time, bees pollinated flowers, ants formed colonies. Birds, as avian dinosaurs nested in trees. Enantiornithines with toothy beaks, early galliforms scratching dirt. Amphibians hopped frogs the size of rabbits, salamanders in moist hollows. The soundscape hummed with hadrosaur lowing, ceratopsian bellows, tyrannosaur roars echoing kilometers. Fossil sites like Hell Creek mix bones randomly. T-RAX tooth marks on Triceratops frills. Hadrosaur herd stampeding traces in mud. No modern predators like wolves or bears. Instead, packs of smaller tyrannosaurs like Albertosaurus or Nanotyrannus, debated as juveniles or species, hunted flanks. Seasons cycled predictably, wet springs flooding rivers, depositing fish for scavengers. Dry summers concentrating herds near waterholes. Fires swept woodlands periodically, charcoal layers show, regenerating ferns quickly. Which, honestly, paints a picture of abundance that dwarfs today's plains. No human farms, no cities, just raw biomass supporting megafauna. Fascinating how life finds a way, right? And hey, subscribe if these ancient ecosystems are lulling you nicely towards sleep. We've got more worlds to wander. Rivers teemed with sturgeon-like fish, sharks patrolling estuaries. Soil was fertile, leached by rains, supporting root crops dinosaurs unearthed. Winds carried dust from volcanic arcs to the west, enriching ground. Day length similar to now, but orbit stable. Nights lit by same moon, though tides weaker from closer position. Atmosphere had higher CO2, fueling plant growth. Oxygen levels comparable. You'd notice no grasses dominating yet. Lawns were fern meadows. No familiar bird song. Instead, squawks from toothed avians. Smells of resinous pines, decaying vegetation, distant sea salt. Predator-prey balance tilted to herbivores in numbers, carnivores sparse atop pyramid. T-RAX density low, 1 per 1,000 square kilometers, inferred from bone counts. Flash floods buried carcasses swiftly, explaining preservation. Hurricanes from warm seas battered coasts, reshaping deltas. So as you settle into this vision, yourself amid fern thickets, conifer shade dappling mudflats, triceratops browsing nearby, distant T-RAX silhouette on a rise, the scene feels strangely earthly, yet utterly foreign. Rivers murmuring, air thick with life, 66 million years before your time. Now that you've settled into that vivid picture of the late Cretaceous floodplain, with its fern-choked rivers and roaming herds of horned and duck-billed dinosaurs, let's turn to how T-RAX actually got around in that world and filled its belly. You know the landscape and the players now, and you felt the anatomical gap between your frame and its massive one. So this is about motion and meals, how those powerful legs propelled it, and those jaws claimed food. T-RAX was bipedal, built for walking more than sustained running, with biomechanical models based on bone proportions and muscle reconstruction suggesting a top walking speed around 10 to 25 kilometers per hour, depending on the individual and terrain. Running estimates vary widely among scientists. Some computer simulations put a maximum burst at 20 to 40 kilometers per hour over short distances, enough to chase down a hadrosaur, but not to outpace an ostrich. Other studies, looking at stress limits on leg bones, argue it couldn't run at all without risking fractures, preferring powerful lunges from a standstill instead. Either way, that's faster than your average human sprint of 15 to 25 kilometers per hour for maybe 100 meters before you tire out completely. Your endurance shines over hours though, jogging marathons at 15 kilometers per hour, while T-RAX likely fatigued quickly after bursts, its huge mass demanding massive oxygen intake. The legs tell the story of that movement. Femurs angled inward like an elephant's to bear weight, knee joints locking for stability, ankles with a bird-like flexibility for shock absorption. Each stride covered 5 to 7 meters when walking, foot bones showing padded heels that cushioned impacts equivalent to a loaded semi-truck hitting pavement. Tail swung side to side as a counterbalance, preventing toppling during turns, while the stiff spine transmitted force from hips to shoulders. You, by contrast, have springy arches in your feet for efficient gait, Achilles tendons storing energy like rubber bands, but your legs max out at carrying 100 kilograms tops without strain. Turning radius was wide for T-RAX. Those hips pivoted slowly, inertia from 9 tons, making quick dodges unlikely, unlike your agile twists on a dime. Footprints from trackways, rare but telling, show a gait similar to large ground birds, toes spreading under pressure that compacted mud like tank treads. Now to hunting and feeding, where the jaws dominate. Biteforce studies using skull CT scans and finite element analysis peg adult T-RAX at 35,000 to 57,000 newtons at the back teeth, enough to crush Triceratops' bone like dry twigs, far beyond a lion's 4,000 newtons, or your own puny 500 to 700 newtons for biting an apple. Jaws closed with a speed inferred from muscle twitch fibers, snapping shut in under a second, serrated teeth puncturing then twisting to tear chunks weighing tens of kilograms. Fossil evidence abounds. Triceratops frills with round punctures matching T-RAX teeth. Hadrosaur bones shattered and sucked dry of marrow, even tyrannosaur bones with bite marks from same species fights. Feeding wasn't always active predation. Tooth marks on fossils show scavenging too. Deep gouges on old Edmontosaurus carcasses, suggesting T-RAX opportunistically claimed kills from smaller theropods or natural deaths. Stomach contents are unknown, but gut capacity from torso volume implies meals of 200 to 500 kilograms at a sitting, digested slowly over days with powerful stomach acids inferred from bone etching patterns. Some injuries on fossils, healed rib fractures, broken arms, hint at close quarters tussles with prey that fought back. Like ceratopsians goring flanks, your own predatory toolkit is laughably absent. No claws longer than nails, no fangs, just blunt teeth and fists that bruise knuckles before denting hide. Humans run at peak for seconds, not lunging meters in a blink. You climb trees for safety, while T-RAX reared up to 6 meters on hind legs to browse high conifers or intimidate rivals. Gait cycles left traces. Hell Creek mudflats preserved stride patterns showing acceleration phases, pauses to scan with head high. Neck muscles, anchored to shoulder blades, whipped the skull forward at speeds rivaling crocodiles scaled up. Forelimbs possibly stabilized struggling prey near the body, claws raking to weaken. Energy costs were high. Daily foraging covered kilometers, burning calories equivalent to a herd of deer. Compared to your 2,000 to 3,000 daily calories, a T-RAX needed 20,000 or more, driving constant hunger. Thermoregulation aided activity. Robust bones suggest endothermy like birds, vascular grooves for heat dumping, unlike your sweat-cooled persistence hunts, which honestly underscores how specialized it was for explosive power over your marathon style. Pretty wild mismatch, isn't it? And hey, if these steady dissections of ancient motion are guiding you gently towards sleep, subscribe for more unhurried explorations of prehistory. Sensory input steered hunts. Forward eyes tracked movement at distance. Nostrils flared for blood scent kilometers off. Eardrums vibrated to herd footsteps through soil. Prey defenses shaped tactics. Ankylosaurus clubs deflected bites. Triceratops charges forced ambushes from cover. Post-kill, T-RAX likely tore flesh in standing posture, dropping chunks to avoid gut trampling, unlike pack wolves sharing. Juveniles hunted smaller game, graduating to megafauna as they grew. Bite scars showing learning curves. So as this sinks in, your legs built for distance across savannas. It's for seismic lunges amid fern rivers. Your bites nibbling salads. It's pulverizing skeletons. The physical chasm widens quietly, leaving no doubt in a raw matchup on that floodplain strength and weaponry tilt utterly toward the predator's engineered might. Now that you've absorbed how T-RAX moved through its world with those explosive lunges and bone-crushing bites, far outpacing your own sprint in raw power if not endurance, let's drift upward to the brains directing all that motion. You've got the physical mismatch clear, the floodplain alive around you both, so this is about the minds, or whatever passed for them, processing sights, smells, and strategies in that ancient landscape. Human brains like yours are marvels of proportion. weighing about 1.3 to 1.5 kilograms in an average adult, which is roughly 2% of your body mass, but packing 86 billion neurons into tightly folded cerebral cortex layers. That cortex, especially the prefrontal areas, handles abstract thought, language, self-awareness, and planning sequences days or weeks ahead, imagining a spear from a stick, predicting weather from clouds, or coordinating a hunt with spoken words. Your hippocampus maps spatial memory for returning to waterholes, amygdala flags dangers emotionally, and mirror neurons let you mimic others for learning skills like fire starting. Blood flow ramps up during complex tasks, fueled by glucose across a blood-brain barrier that keeps toxins out. Evolution favored this expansion over millions of years, from early hominids to you, turning brainpower into tools that reshape the planet. T-RAX brains, by contrast, come to us indirectly through endocasts, plaster or digital molds of the skull's brain cavity, revealing a structure large for a reptile at around 400 to 500 cubic centimeters. But that's a tiny fraction relative to its 7,000 kilogram body, more like 0.005%. The overall shape was elongated, with expanded olfactory lobes at the front for smell processing, bulging optic lobes for vision, and a cerebellum at the rear beefed up for balance and coordination during those massive strides. No vast neocortex equivalent. Instead, regions specialized for sensory integration and reflex motor responses, much like enlarged versions of crocodile or bird brains. CT scans of skulls like Stan show vascular impressions suggesting active blood flow, but the neuron count likely topped out at a few 100 million, geared toward predator basics rather than philosophy. Sensory wiring stands out in those endocasts. T-RAX olfactory bulbs were massive, twice the size relative to cerebrum as in humans, implying smell acuity to track blood or carrion from kilometers away, pass through layered pallium tissue like a supercharged dog's nose. Optic nerves fed large tectum areas for motion detection and binocular depth, forward-facing eyes granting stereopsis for judging strike distances on a fleeing hadrosaur. Hearing centers handled low frequencies for ground vibrations or roars, semicircular canals oversized for stabilizing that swinging head. Your senses skew toward color discrimination and fine touch in fingertips, with a parietal lobe integrating hand-eye precision for threading needles, not lunging at shadows. Behavior leaves faint fossil traces, not mind reading. Trackways suggest solitary or paired movement. No herd patterns like elephants. Growth series from juvenile skulls to adults show maturing brain expansion, possibly shifting from pack hunting young to lone apex adults. Healed bite marks on fossils hint at intraspecies scraps over territory or mates. Aggression circuits firing without language to negotiate. Nesting evidence is absent for T-RAX specifically, but related tyrannosaurs like Troodon had parental care, inferred from eggs with embryos. Maybe T-RAX juveniles clustered too. Brains wired for instinctual protection. No tool use marks. Claws scratched but didn't shape branches. Sociality. Growth pathologies suggest injuries from conspecifics, not cooperation. Intelligence metrics like encephalization quotient, brain size adjusted for body mass, put T-RAX higher than stegosaurs, but below dolphins or primates, around 2 to 3 times a crocodile's, suited for ambush tactics, territory mapping, and prey selection over puzzles or art. Humans clock in at 7 to 8 EQ, enabling cumulative culture, stories passed down, tech iterated across generations. You ponder what if, simulate scenarios mentally. T-Rex reacted to now. Reflexes honed by evolution, not reflection. Brain cases show no Broca's area analog for speech, no expanded temporal lobes for memory narratives. Feeding efficiency, picking optimal bite angles on bone, demanded calculation, but instinctual, like sharks optimizing strikes. Juvenile brains, proportionally larger, might have allowed learning prey vulnerabilities, scaling down as body grew. Metabolism supported it. Endocast blood vessels imply warm running tissue, neurons firing faster than ectotherms, aiding quick decisions in hunts. Compared to your constant cortical chatter, planning dinner while walking, its was streamlined. Sense, assess, strike. Which honestly is pretty efficient for its niche. No wasted capacity on hypotheticals. Fascinating how evolution tunes hardware to habitat, right? And hey, if these neural contrasts are settling your thoughts into calm patterns, subscribe for more measured looks at ancient minds. Problem-solving glimpses, fossils with ingested gastroliths. No, that's myth for theropods. T-Rex stomachs ground via grit swallowed incidentally. Learning from failures. Healed pathologies show survival smarts, adapting post-injury. Your edge, theory of mind, reading intentions in others' eyes, forming alliances. T-Rex coordinated via pheromones or postures, if at all. Brain wiring supports dominance displays, not diplomacy. Longevity factored in. Your 70 to 80 years allow wisdom accumulation. T-Rex lived 20 to 30 years max, brains maturing fast for reproduction around age 14 to 18, per bone rings. So as this comparison quiets down, your expansive cortex weaving plans across time, its compact core mastering immediate survival amid floodplain foes. The divide clarifies softly. T-Rex sends powerfully as a predator, but your brain layers problem-solving and foresight on levels untouched by fossil traces. Now that you've weighed the stark differences between your expansive planning brain and the T-Rex's sensory-tuned one, both shaped by their worlds, with yours favoring foresight over instinct, let's ease into a careful thought experiment. Picture yourself just as you are, suddenly and silently placed on that late Cretaceous floodplain we've explored, barehanded, no clothes even beyond basics, standing amid ferns and distant hadrosaur calls, with a lone adult T-Rex maybe 200 meters off, grazing on a fresh kill or idly scanning the horizon. The air hangs humid, carrying scents of decay and resin, and the first factor is wind. Always wind. T-Rex olfactory bulbs, those oversized processors in its brain case, could detect carrion or blood from several kilometers if upwind, based on comparisons to vultures and modern crocs scaled up. If the breeze blows from you toward it, your human sweat, unfamiliar to its world, might register as novel prey scent, prompting a head tilt and nostril flare. Downwind, you're invisible olfactorily, but any rustle from your steps crunches louder than intended on leaf litter, since its low-frequency hearing picked up herd thuds through soil vibrations. Stillness helps. Freeze like a gazelle, and motion-sensitive optic tectum might gloss over your silhouette against dappled conifer shade, as sudden jerks trigger strikes more than steady forms. Vision plays next. Forward-facing eyes gave binocular overlap for depth on targets up to 50 meters or so. Acuity sharp for movement in daylight, inferred from large optic lobes and pupil size estimates. At 200 meters, you're a small anomaly, upright biped among horizontal grazers, but not instantly alarming if blending with upright tree trunks. Camouflage fails you. Pale skin glows against mud, no natural stripes or scales. If it notices, A curious approach at walking pace, say 15 kilometers per hour, closes distance in under a minute, head weaving side to side like a heron to triangulate. Your options narrow fast, unarmed. Sprint? Your 20 kilometer per hour burst fades in 30 seconds, legs burning lactic acid, while its lunge covers ground faster short term, even if top speed debates cap it at 30 to 40 kilometers per hour without bone risk. Climb a tree. Conifers too tall and needle slick, no low branches for your grip. Ferns offer no height. Water nearby, a river oxbow, might deter if deep, since tyrannosaur fossils show no aquatic adaptations beyond wading, unlike crocs, but you'd splash alerting it further. Dense thickets of horsetails and cycads could screen you briefly. If you belly crawl silent, heart pounding at 150 beats per minute. Behavior remains the wild card, pieced from fossils without direct observation. Most tyrannosaur trackways show solitary paths, no stalking crouches preserved, suggesting opportunistic feeders over relentless chasers. A healthy adult might dismiss small, non-prey like you, too little meat for the energy, after a sniff, like lions ignoring hyraxes. Juveniles, hungrier, posed more threat, but assume adult. Bite marks on fossils indicate preference for ton-plus herbivores, not rodents, yet injuries on T-RAX bones, healed gashes from Triceratops horns, show risk tolerance for big fights, so curiosity could turn fatal if you bolt, triggering chase reflex. Odds stack physically. Its 50,000 Newton-bite Seaver's limbs effortlessly. Your punches dent nothing through pebbly hide estimated 5 to 10 centimeters thick in key spots. No claws match yours. Fingernails snap useless. Endurance favors you long-term. Hide days, forage berries. But dehydration hits first in humid heat. No fire for signals. Alien microbes in water risking dysentery. Socially alone. No group to distract. T-RAX might roar infrasound to claim territory, rattling your bones kilometers off. Free success hinges on distance and luck. 50% notice rate guessed from predator studies, dropping if camouflaged. Approach. 9-ton mass steps pulverize Earth, ground quaking 10 meters out. Hot breath reeking protein as jaws gape experimentally. Survival then. Play dead unproven. Croc analogues roll kills, not investigate motionless. Dodge futile. Turn radius lags yours, but momentum crushes. Which honestly feels like a scenario evolution never scripted for you. That raw exposure. Fascinating how senses dictate fate without a fight, right? And hey, if this quiet walkthrough of ancient odds is soothing your mind toward rest, subscribe for more thoughtful drifts through time. Escape vectors repeat. Burrow in mud. No time, no claws. Yell. Voice unfamiliar. Might intrigue or scare off. But vocalizations unknown beyond bellow estimates. Nightfall helps. Your night vision edges diurnal predators, though its nose persists. Population density low. 1 T-RAX per 100 square kilometers inferred. Reduces repeat encounters, but herds nearby draw it away or toward commotion. Pathologies factor. Old or injured T-RAX, common in fossils nearing 30 years, move slower, hungrier, raising stakes. Mental toll. Your prefrontal cortex frets scenarios, planning hides. It reacts, conserving energy. So as the image fades, your form crouched still in fern shade, pulse slowing, T-RAX ambling past oblivious or fixated, the truth settles calmly. Survival rides on evasion, wind's whim, behavioral unknowns, and sheer chance, not muscle or fang in that bare-handed drop into deep time. Now that you've walked through that bare-handed scenario on the floodplain, heart racing in the ferns, survival hinging on stillness and luck alone, Let's shift the thought experiment just a bit. Imagine you're not alone anymore, and you've got time to improvise basic tools from the landscape, drawing on what early humans did with stones, wood, and fire against mammoths or cave lions. This is still a hypothetical, grounded in archaeology and physics, not a guaranteed win. Early Homo sapiens, from about 300,000 years ago, mastered stone-tipped spears, flaked flint or obsidian points hafted to wooden shafts with sinew or resin, reaching 2 to 3 meters long. Thrusting versions delivered force equivalent to a sledgehammer when groups stabbed in unison, while thrown atlatl darts amplified speed to 100 kilometers per hour, piercing elephant hide at 20 meters. A band of 10 humans could surround prey, one distracting from front while others flanked, spears aimed at eyes, underbelly, or legs to hamstring. Against a T-Rex's thicker hide, estimated 5 to 15 centimeters on flanks, tougher than rhino skin, multiple stabs might penetrate vitals after minutes of probing, blood loss weakening it over time. Your bare fist couldn't dent. These could, if coordinated. Fire changes dynamics too, controlled by humans 1.5 million years back via hearths in caves. Smoky branches waved as torches deterred charges, flames leaping 2 meters high from bundled ferns and conifer bark, heat stressing an endothermic giant unused to it. Archaeological sites like Wonderwork Cave show fire-hardened spears resisting snaps, and pit traps dug with digging sticks, 1 meter deep, camouflaged with branches, funneled beasts into kill zones, a scene in Clovis kills of megafauna. Terrain awareness amplifies this. Lure to riverbanks where mud slows 9-ton steps, or upslopes where your lighter frames climb while it slides, using boulders as barriers like Neanderthals herding bison. Cooperation is the real edge. Vocal signals, gestures, division of roles from ethnographic studies of sand hunters taking giraffes. One scouts wind, another signals with bird calls mimicking hadrosaurs to draw curiosity, group encircling silently. Communication via proto-language plans, ambushes days ahead, unlike T-Rex solitary paths inferred from tracks. Numbers matter, solo humans still risks a bite. 5 to 10 tip odds, spears totaling 50,000 newtons of collective thrust if synchronized, matching its jaw but spread out. Risks stay high though. Healthy adult T-Rex shrugs initial wounds, its mass trampling tents or scattering groups in panic. Juvenile easier, smaller at 2 tons. Old ones with pathologies hobble into traps. Direct charge suicidal. Physics says momentum crushes spears like twigs if mistimed. Analogies from elephant hunts. Zulu impis used 1.5 meter assegais in volleys, wounding before close kill, losing few to stampedes. Maasai Morans poison arrows on Cape Buffalo, tracking bled out miles. Viable for T-Rex too, if curare-like plant toxins brood, though Cretaceous flora untested. Planning unfolds over days. Scout tracks, 40 centimeter footprints space 6 meters, map territories, bait with hadrosaur guts to fatigue it. Traps near waterholes concentrate herds, drawing predator predictably. Endurance hunting shines, shadow it kilometers, wearing it down sans burst speed. Advantage over distance, which, honestly, flips the script from evasion to attrition. Pretty clever adaptation. Fascinating how hands and heads turn weakness to strategy, right? And hey, if these tool-borne turnarounds are easing you deeper into relaxation, subscribe for more steady riffs on human ingenuity. Weapons evolve mid-scenario. Slings hurl fist-sized rocks at eyes, 50 meters accurate per Natufian evidence. Clubs from Araucaria branches stun limbs. Smoke signals coordinate distant flanks. Night watches rotate, your color vision spotting silhouettes. Biology tempers optimism. T-RAX blood clots fast from vascular grooves. Infections rare per healed fossils. Group cohesion cracks under roars shaking ground. Juveniles swarm protect mothers. Unknown, but risks multiply. Modern hunter-gatherer data. Hadza takes zebra with bows, minimal injury. Scale to T-RAX demands 20-plus people, weeks of prep. Avoidance wiser, steer clear territories, thrive on smaller game. So as this layer settles, your band melting into ferns, spears ready, firelit faces plotting around a pit, the balance tips toward caution. Tools and teamwork boost survival from slim to workable. Yet evidence-based realism keeps T-RAX a beast to evade, not engage head-on in its domain. Now that you've seen how modern tools and systems would wrap around your fragile body to manage a T-RAX encounter, from rifles piercing thick hide to drones tracking every step, it's worth pausing to consider where all those details actually come from. Every size estimate, speed calculation, and behavior inference traces back to fossils pulled from rock, studied under microscopes and computers, pieced together over a century of patient work. Fossils start as rare luck. An animal dies near a river. Floods bury its bones in mud before scavengers scatter them. And minerals slowly replace organic material over millions of years, turning calcium phosphate into stone. Erosion later exposes them. Badlands in Montana or South Dakota weathering away Hell Creek layers to reveal dinosaur bones, protruding like pale fingers from hillsides. Prospectors walk transects, spotting bone fragments weathered white against red soil, then flag sites for excavation. Teams use picks, brushes, and jackets of plaster-soaked burlap to encase blocks weighing tons, airlifting them by helicopter to labs, where preparation takes years of air scribes and dental tools chipping matrix. Take Sioux, the most famous T-RAX specimen, unearthed in 1990 near Faith, South Dakota, by amateur Sue Hendrickson. At 90% complete, over 250 bones. It's the largest and most intact, now at Chicago's Field Museum, after a record $8.4 million auction. Sue stood 12.3 meters long, skull 1.52 meters, with pathologies like a healed triceratops gore wound on the right upper arm and rib infections suggesting survival of brutal fights. Scotty, from Saskatchewan's Frenchman Formation in 1991, edges Sue in mass at about 9 tons, estimated from femur girth, with a shorter but stockier build shown by broader pelvic bones. Stan, 80% complete from 1987 in Hell Creek, yielded the first T-RAX endocast for brain studies and shows bite marks on its own tail from another tyrannosaur. Mass estimates blend methods. Volumetric scaling from scaled-up chicken models, bone circumference regressions from ostriches and crocs, and laser scans filling skeletal gaps with muscle profiles. Sue's femur, 55 centimeters diameter at midshaft, predicts 8.4 tons via equations calibrated on elephants. Discrepancies arise because dinosaurs had air sacs lightening torsos like birds. Bite force comes from jaw mechanics. CT scans of Stan and Jane skulls model stress via finite element analysis, simulating muscle pulls on 36 sensors. Results: 35,000 newtons rear molars, 57,000 at canines for adults, crushing bone as seen in Edmontosaurus fossils, with matching punctures and spiral fractures. Tooth wear shows repeated bone gnawing, serrations for flesh slicing, growth rings in limb bones, lines of arrested development like tree rings, reveal life history. thin section microscopy under polarized light counts annually. Juveniles grew 2,000 kilograms yearly, slowing after 15 years. Max lifespan 28 to 33 for largest adults. Sue died at 28. Body mass peaking fast, then stabilizing, unlike steady human growth. Teeth tell diets, 50 to 60 per skull, shed every 2 years. Microwear showing flesh cuts and bone polish. Root canals preserve blood vessels. Isotopes trace diets. Heavy nitrogen from carnivory. Carbon from conifer-fed prey. Skin impressions rare for T-Rex itself, but tyrannosaurid relatives like Gorgosaurus yield pebbly scales 1 to 5 centimeters, no feathers on adults. Juvenile T-Rex arms on MOR 1,125 hint fluff, but adults likely bald and scaled for shedding heat. Trackways, scarce but vital, like the Jim Corton trackway in Canada, show stride lengths matching skeletal gaits, speeds via footprint spacing, walking at 18 kilometers per hour, no running evidence. Tail drag absent, confirming horizontal posture. Pathologies abound. 50% of T-Rex fossils show heel trauma, broken ribs, punctured jaws, infected tails, indicating resilience, fights with prey or rivals. Sue's crushed leg suggests failed Triceratops charge. Museum mounts evolve. Early upright poses corrected by 1990s via joint studies. Field Museum Sue uses steel armature mimicking ligament tension, accurate to millimeters from laser data. Isotopes from tooth enamel map migrations. Oxygen gradients show some T-Rex roam 200 kilometers seasonally. Collagen proteins extracted confirm theropod relations to birds. Histology reveals vascularity. Dense Haversian canals signal endothermy. Fast growth like mammals. Which, honestly, shows how incremental it all is, bone by bone building the picture. Fascinating detective work, right? And hey, if these layers of fossil evidence are smoothing your path to sleep, subscribe for more unhurried paleontology tales. Dating pins eras. Hell Creek zircons yield 66.043 million years via argon-argon, bracketing extinction. Bone beds mix species, proving coexistence. Preparation labs use acid etching sparingly, preferring mechanical to preserve microstructure. CT datasets now public for 3D printing replicas. Juvenile Jane at 80% complete clarifies growth. Ontogenetic changes like eye position shifting forward with age. So as these methods settle in, excavations yielding measurable bones, scans quantifying forces, rings timing lives, pathologies narrating dramas, you sense paleontology's rigor. Testable claims from rock, refined by debate, anchoring every U versus T-Rex detail in evidence, not guesswork. You and T-Rex never had a chance to meet, and not just because one of you is very good at building smartphones, and the other was very good at biting through bone. You're separated by an ocean of time so wide that it's hard to hold in your head all at once. About 66 million years ago, at the very end of the Cretaceous period, Earth went through one of the most dramatic bad days in its history. Geologists call the boundary between the Cretaceous and the Paleogene the KPG boundary, and they can actually see it in rock layers as a thin band rich in the element iridium, which is rare in Earth's crust, but more common in certain meteorites. Just above that layer, fossils of non-avian dinosaurs like T-Rex disappear almost entirely, while below it they're abundant, especially in formations such as Hell Creek in North America. The leading explanation is a large asteroid impact on the order of 10 kilometers across, striking what is now the Yucatan Peninsula and forming the Chicxulub crater, about 180 kilometers in diameter. The energy released would have been equivalent to billions of nuclear weapons, vaporizing rock, igniting wildfires, and throwing vast amounts of dust and aerosols into the atmosphere. That dust and soot would have dimmed sunlight globally for months to years, a phenomenon sometimes called impact winter. With less sunlight, photosynthesis slowed dramatically, plants died back, and food chains on land and in the oceans collapsed from the bottom up. Non-avian dinosaurs like T-RAX, which sat near the top of terrestrial food webs and depended on large herbivores, couldn't ride out that kind of shock for long. Many marine reptiles, ammonites, and other groups also vanished, while smaller, more generalist animals that could eat a wide range of foods or shelter underground fared better. Birds, the avian dinosaurs, are descended from small theropods and represent one lineage that did make it through, which means that in a very real evolutionary sense, some dinosaurs are still with you today in the form of pigeons, crows, and chickens. From the last T-RAX to the first anatomically modern human, there's a gap of about 65 million years. Anatomically modern Homo sapiens appear in the fossil record roughly 300,000 years ago in Africa, with earlier hominin ancestors like Australopithecus and Homo erectus stretching back a few million years before that. If you compressed Earth's 4.5 billion year history into a single calendar year, non-avian dinosaurs would go extinct around December 26th, while modern humans would arrive in the last hour of December 31st. And what you think of as history, cities, writing, states, would fit into the last few seconds before midnight. T-RAX, which lived between about 68 and 66 million years ago, is closer in time to earlier dinosaurs like Allosaurus than it is to you. But even those earlier dinosaurs lived tens of millions of years before T-RAX. The scale can feel almost absurd. More time separates you from T-RAX than separates T-RAX from many early mammals that were scurrying under its feet. Your species' story, although brief in comparison, is dense. Over a few 100,000 years, humans evolved larger brains with expanded frontal lobes, mastered controlled fire, developed increasingly sophisticated stone tools, and eventually invented agriculture around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. That shift to farming supported larger settlements, then cities, and from there came writing, organized religions, laws, and eventually science and technology. The very idea that you can reconstruct T-RAX's life from fossils, date rocks, model its bite force, infer its growth from your position in the present, is a product of this late rapid flowering of human culture. T-RAX had powerful senses and a brain well tuned to its environment, but it had no way to imagine something 66 million years in its future thinking about it in such detail. When you picture the K-Peach extinction, it's tempting to see it as the end of the dinosaurs and the start of mammals, but that's a simplification. Mammals had already been around for more than 100 million years by the time the asteroid struck, living in the shadows of dinosaurs as small, mostly nocturnal animals. The extinction cleared ecological space, niches that would eventually be filled by larger mammals, including primates, hoofed animals, and whales. But that diversification took millions of years. Humans are very late beneficiaries of that long recovery, occupying a branch of the primate tree that only recently developed the cognitive capacities to ask questions like, what if you versus T-RAX? And to answer them with evidence instead of stories. So when you set your fragile body and big brain next to T-RAX in your imagination, you're really bridging a gulf of time and events so large that no individual creature could ever perceive it. That imagined meeting is impossible in reality, not because of some barrier in space, but because one of you belongs to a world that ended long before the other existed. In a way, the real versus isn't about who would win in a fight, but about how your kind has learned to read the traces of the past. Bones in rock, isotopes in minerals, craters in crust, and turn them into an understanding of life and extinction. You're using tools that only a very recent animal on a very old planet could have developed. To think calmly about a predator that vanished tens of millions of years before the first human ever took a breath. Now that you've let the vastness of deep time settle in, 66 million years from the last T-RAX breath to your first thought about it, it's natural to wonder how those bones in museums and labs turn into the roaring beasts you see on screens. Museums and movies both shape your mental picture, but they pull from different wells. One from careful measurement, the other from drama. Museums anchor the real story. The Field Museum's Sue stands in a classic horizontal pose, tail outstretched, head forward, based on joint studies from the 1990s that corrected those old, upright kangaroo mounts from the early 1900s. You walk under those jaws, 1.5 meters long, teeth recast from originals, and read plaques citing CT scans for bite force or growth rings for age 28. Displays update too. The American Museum of Natural History tweaked its T-RAX in 2016, flexing the tail more realistically after muscle modeling showed greater agility. Kids touch replicas, smell the faint mineral dust, and absorb facts like femur circumference predicting 8 tons, measurable, testable, evolving with papers. Movies, though, crank the volume. Jurassic Park's 1993 T-RAX sprints 40 kilometers per hour through rain, far beyond current biomechanical caps at 20 to 30 for short bursts. Leg bones risking fracture under 9 tons at full gallop. That scene thrilled, but paleontologists like Phil Curry noted post-release how real trackways show walking gaits, not Hollywood dashes. The vision myth, can't see still objects, stems from a novel line, not science. Forward-facing eyes and large optic lobes confirm binocular motion detection. No infrared nonsense, just keen daylight acuity like hawks. Games amplify too. Ark, Survival Evolved, lets you tame T-RAX as mounts, breeding packs with behaviors pulled from thin air. Fossil tracks hint solitary adults. Juveniles may be grouping, but no herding evidence. Speed sliders ignore physics. Real models from John Hutchinson's lab limit acceleration to avoid snapping tibias. Feathers? Early tyrannosaurs like Dylon had fuzz, but adult T-RAX scales from relatives argue against fluffy kings. Movies blend it for cuteness. Science sticks to pebbly hide. Behavior gets fictionalized most. Rampaging alpha predators in films ignore fossil hints. Bite-marked tails suggest same species scraps over kills, not blind rage. Jurassic World upsizes to 20 tons. Double evidence-based max. Real mass from Scotty's bones tops 9. Pack hunting. Fan theory from Nano-Tyrannus debates. Separate species or juveniles. But no bone beds confirm. Pop culture sticks because it's vivid. Raw sound effects from slowed elephant rumbles, not guessed tyrannosaur calls. Misconceptions linger, like tiny arms for comic relief, ignoring muscle scars proving 200-kilogram lifts, or cold-blooded sluggishness, debunked by vascular bone tissue signaling endothermy. Science pushes back gently. Documentaries like Prehistoric Planet use CGI grounded in peer-reviewed papers, slow-motion lunges from osteology, smells from olfactory bulb ratios. Museums host live digs via cams, showing plaster jacketing in Hell Creek, turning mystery to method. Which honestly is why media hooks you first, facts refine later, entertainment sparks, evidence sustains. Fascinating mismatch, right? And hey, if these cultural tweaks versus bone truths are blurring your edges towards sleep, subscribe for more balanced ancient portraits. Refinements continue. 2020's papers debate growth spurts from Jane Juvenile, arm utility from Jane's well-preserved pair, speed recalcs via AI muscle sims trim estimates further. Feathers fade for adults as Uteranus scales emerge. Your U versus T-RAX image. Less velociraptor fast, more calculated ambusher. No blind spots, just predator efficiency. Media primes drama, fossils demand restraint. Adjusting that mental sketch grounds the hypothetical in reality. Your clever mind pondering a less cartoonish, more formidable ancient force. Now that you've sifted through the fossils, the movies, and the myths, adjusting your picture of T-RAX from screen monster to the grounded predator pieced from bone and rock, it's time to tie all those threads together quietly. You've walked the floodplain, felt the anatomical gaps, run the scenarios from bare skin to steel barriers, and sensed the deep time between you. This is the calm verdict on you versus T-RAX, built strictly on what the evidence supports. No drama added. Start with a raw physical matchup, barehanded on that late Cretaceous mudflat. T-RAX tips the scales at 7 to 9 tons, 40 feet from snout to tail tip, with a skull packing 50 serrated teeth and a bite force of 35 to 57,000 newtons, enough to shear your limbs like wet paper. Its forward eyes and oversized olfactory bulbs spot motion and sense from afar. Legs lunging at 20 to 40 kilometers per hour short range, outpacing your 25-kilometer sprint that fades in seconds. You bring upright posture for scanning, endurance for hours of jogging, dexterous hands for climbing ferns, and a brain with 86 billion neurons for hypotheticals. But no hide matches its pebbly armor. No speed closes the gap. No fangs counter jaws that crush Triceratops bone. Evidence from pathologies, healed gashes on T-RAX ribs, shows it shrugged off worse than your punches. Advantage: T-RAX overwhelmingly if it notices you. Survival clings to stillness, wind direction, and luck, as trackways and endocasts confirm its opportunistic senses. Layer in Stone Age tools and a small band of 10, as early sapiens did against megafauna like mammoths. Stone-tipped spears, 2 meters long with flint points hafted by resin, deliver collective thrusts nearing its bite force when synchronized, piercing hide 5 to 15 centimeters thick after probing vitals. Fire from hearths, controlled since 1.5 million years ago. Brands with 2-meter flames, smoke confusing nostrils. Pit traps 1 meter deep, baited with scavenged guts. Funnel 9 tons into kill zones. Mud slowing strides as your lighter frames skirt edges. Communication via gestures and calls plans ambushes over days, scouting 40-centimeter footprints spaced 6 meters. Analogies hold. Zulu impis bloodied elephants with assegais, Hadza bows downed zebra. Yet risks loom. Its momentum tramples tents. Pathologies rare, meaning healthy adults endure initial stabs, turning radius lagging but mass pulverizing flanks. Direct assault still gambles lives. Evidence favors evasion upgraded to attrition. Advantage: humans marginally through numbers planning terrain. Your prefrontal cortex weaving strategies absent in its reflex core. Fast forward to modern tech, and the scales invert completely. Big game rifles hurl bullets at 900 meters per second, thousands of joules cracking elephant skulls thicker than T-RAX bone proportions. Anti-material rounds shred armor beyond its hide. Armored trucks at 30 tons collide with unstoppable force. Drones with thermal cams track heat signatures kilometers out. GPS collars sedate via helicopter darts scaled from rhino doses. Fences of high tensile steel and concrete, electrified like those holding Cape Buffalo, contain rams dwarfing its pivots. Protocols from wildlife teams, radios, evacuation routes, layer safety no lone predator breaches. Your body stays fragile, sprint unchanged, but society wraps it. Kinetic energy physics, engineering margins, veterinary math. Real-world elephant culls and tiger relocations prove it, managed from afar. Advantage: humans, decisively. Not muscle, but machines born of cumulative culture. Across these, patterns emerge from fossils and physics. T-RAX dominated its niche. Hell Creek bone beds mix its tooth marks with Triceratops frills, growth rings showing 28-year lifespans peaking at apex power. Your strengths: encephalization quotient 7 times higher, tool iteration from older wood chops to iPhones, thrive beyond solo brawls. Environment tips it. Floodplain favors its bursts, modern roads its ramming. Purely natural, it wins. Augmented by hands and heads you do. Which honestly reframes the whole thought experiment gently. The true edge isn't fangs or fists, but your lineage's quiet triumph. Decoding its world from iridium layers and CT scans, bridging 66 million years with evidence alone. Fascinating how science turns vanished bone to vivid truth, right? And hey, if this steady synthesis has you drifting softly now, subscribe for more reflective journeys through time. In the end, you versus T-RAX dissolves into appreciation. Your mind, late on Earth's clock, holding its story whole. No combat needed. Understanding endures as you settle deeper into calm. The ancient floodplain fading like a dream well explored. Sleep comes easy with facts as your anchor.